All right, are we all set? Are we ready to roll into this next session, or do we need a few more minutes? I love your energy. I need that. I need that. All right. So we're going to talk through mastering success, right? So navigating the corporate and entrepreneurial terrain. And so we're going to go through kind of four parts. So the first section, I'd like to ask my good friend, Lieutenant Colonel, retired Lieutenant Colonel Betty, to come up and walk us through the military aspect, her transition from being that structured military environment. And we kind of spoke, we stole a little bit of that thunder, and then being very honest and authentic, because that is a huge transition, being in the military for 20 plus years and then coming into corporate America. And so she will share, because her transition is very fresh, and while I can offer up mine, I believe that the nuggets that I would share, it's a bit of spoiled milk and we can get fresh milk. So I'm going to ask her to come up and share her journey. And then from there, we'll move from the military into thriving in corporate world. And so we'll spend about 10 minutes there, and I'll just kind of walk you through what are the skill sets, the things that I've mastered and I've put into my toolkit. So we're literally going on a journey. Get your book bag on, and I'm just going to be throwing tools, right? And if the tool apply, put it in your bag. If it doesn't, throw it away, but don't hit the person to your left or right with it. All right. And so then after talking through thriving in corporate America, then we'll do the transition. Actually, we're going to do an interactive piece. Are you all familiar with mirroring and labeling? It's a part of networking. It's effective networking. Have anyone heard of that, mirroring? Or, oh, I'm so excited. Okay, so I'll be showing and helping you all understand effective networking, because that's a huge piece as you think about being a successful entrepreneur and in the corporate space. Like, y'all, we have to master networking. And so I'll give you a few tools there. And then we'll go into the part three, is transitioning into entrepreneurship. And I'll kind of discuss my experience as a co-founder of a tech startup. And then we will end with some of the differences about corporate and entrepreneurial worlds, and then how do you integrate both of those skill sets into what I call intrapreneurship. All right, and then we'll close out with a bit of Q&A and go from there. How does that sound? Okay, so want to give you a bit about my background, because I think it's unfair to have someone in front of you with bold statements like mastering success. And for all you know, I've probably just ran a corner store, which is not, like, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, right? But you should understand who's in front of you and understand their backgrounds. And so really quickly, my background, West Point graduate. I was the first Black female out of the state of Wisconsin to attend the U.S. Military Academy. And that's because you have to get a congressional or a nomination from the Congress, a congressman, a senator, or vice president, or the president. So they're able to truly restrict who gets into the military academies. And so from there, graduated from West Point, went into the Army, total 11 years from beginning of the academy to when I got out in January 2009. From there, I went into corporate America, into the retail space. I saw the ugly side of humanity, especially my 14 months in Iraq. And I was like, I just want to be around pretty things. And so I completely left what I did in IT. So in the military, I did IT and went directly into retail, where I've worked for the likes of Walmart. I ran a $500 million operation for Walmart. Wanted to scale up, and so I went into the Bloomingdale's environment, ran all the JCPenney stores in the Southeast, into my last job in corporate America, which is with Starboard, which is one of the maisons of LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, where I ran global operations for them. So that's kind of quickly my background. I'm going to, at this time, ask Betty to come up and to share a bit about her background, and equally as importantly, kind of walk through her time in the military, and what were the things that she learned while in the military, and how she can leverage those into her new endeavors into corporate America. Betty?
Thank you, Tracy. First and foremost, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here in front of you today. My name is Betty Myrtle. I recently retired from the Army after 26 years of service, so thank you. Like Tracy, I also attended the United States Military Academy at West Point. Tracy was one of my little sisters there, but now she's one of my biggest mentors. I come from the inner city. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. My family My family are immigrants, and both my mother and father immigrated from Haiti, and so I grew up in a single family home with not very many options. I had a lot of different labels, being labeled at risk or not smart, not capable, and individuals thinking that you're not able to succeed or achieve certain goals. And so I knew early on that I wanted to get out of the environment that I was in. So I relied heavily on the idea of going into the military as my way of not only achieving a way out and a path from the conditions that we were living in, but also as an opportunity for me to find financial freedom and to move from the poor class to the middle class. Because of so many people who had thought or who valued or identified something in me, I was given the opportunity to go to West Point. Initially, I was going to go straight into the enlist into the military, but I had the opportunity to go to West Point. I majored in information systems engineering while I was at West Point, commissioned in 2002 as a military intelligence officer. I spent 10 years of my career as an intel officer deploying to various countries, Korea, Iraq, where I'd led highly technical teams and helped develop intricate intelligence products to help the warfighter. I then had the opportunity to go and get my master's, and then I went back to West Point to serve in a DEI role where I was responsible for overall minority recruitment for West Point. During those 3 years, we broke phenomenal records when it came to African American enrollment as well as Hispanic enrollment, women enrollment. A lot of those things were highlighted where we had the most women graduates, Black graduates of West Point. We had the most Hispanic graduates of West Point, and we also increased and had the most women graduates of West Point under my tenure. After that, I then had the opportunity to go and branch into a different field in the Army, where I went into the cyberspace operations field. I spent the last 9 years leading technical teams again, and having the opportunity to not only fight a different fight within cyberspace and a different battle space, but also lead teams that did some very technical and very challenging things within cyberspace. I'm now, concluding my career as the deputy director of cyber and electronic warfare at the Pentagon. And in that capacity, I help set the strategies and the policies for what the Army is going to look like in cyberspace and the cybersecurity force is going to look like within the next 10, 15, and 20 years and beyond. And so, like I said, I'm concluding my career in the military, but it's not a overall conclusion of my career. And I've learned so much from the military, not only first and foremost leadership skills. I think, after 26 years, you learn how to lead, but most importantly, you learn when to lead and when to get out of the way and let others lead. I've led some very technical teams. I wasn't the smartest person in a room. I didn't try to be the smartest person in a room, but I leveraged talent and skills, and I also empowered my subordinates and my lower enlisted individuals to be that voice for me. There are often many times where I was in front of C-suite executives and generals, and it wasn't me that was briefing. I would come and do the intro and let the smartest 19-year-old, the smartest 20-year-old, the smartest 25-year-old do the briefing because they could explain that technical skills. And as leaders, we need to humble ourselves to know when it's important for us to lead and be out front and when we need to step back and get out of the way. But a part of that is, coaching. It's a part of mentoring. It's a part of also being an advocate. And that's one thing I also learned from the military is, the importance of advocacy. Because if you don't have an advocate, it's no longer about, as you progress through the military, you learn it's no longer about what you know, but about who's speaking on your behalf when you're not in the room. But you got to leave a lasting impression. So you got to come in and do the work, and then also not only learn to advocate for yourselves, but find the right mentors, find the right coach, find the right advocates who are going to speak on your behalf when you're not in a room, because that's when opportunities open up. It doesn't matter how much hard work you do. They say there's 30% of it is hard work, 70% of it is actually who's speaking for you and who's actually opening those opportunities for you when you're not at the table. But it's important that when you do get a seat at the table, that you are being an advocate, because representation matters. It's not only just representation matters, but it's also important that you build a legacy behind you. You have to have that succession plan. What is your succession plan? I think the military does a phenomenal job of succession planning. We know that you're going to be in a leadership job 18 to 24 months, and someone's right behind you and moving on. But you've got to ensure that you develop an organization that can survive when you're not there. Because if everything goes awry when you leave, then you weren't an effective leader and you didn't leave a lasting impression on those that are within your organization. Communication is also important. I think the previous panel talked about, are you an effective communicator? And you'll learn very quickly in the military, are you effectively communicating? You've got to be able not only to communicate to hires on what it is you can and can't do, but also to your subordinates and your direct reports on what it is that they're asking you to do and if it can be achieved. And you've got to be able to not only provide options. You can't just go into your supervisor and say, oh, well, we can't do that. You've got to also always try to figure out, how do you get to yes? Well, we can't do A, but I can do B. And if we do B, this is what we can achieve because of that. And sometimes that requires critical thinking, that requires a lot of hard thoughts, a lot of hard answers, and it also requires you to create some of those risk assessments and asking the smarter people in the room to give you that advice. And so those are just about five different things I talked about on what I've learned and mastered as a military officer. And now that I'm transitioning into my new career and a new journey, there's a couple of things that I didn't learn in the military, but I'm learning now. First and foremost, the power of coaching. Even though I had leaders and mentors, having an executive coach and actually having someone to coach you through what is happening and why, and helping you get through different challenges in your careers is important. And I think we don't give that a lot of credit on the importance of having an executive coach. Professional athletes have coaches, not just their own person, not just their own team coaches, but they actually have personal coaches on the side when they're not in season to help them get to their optimal peak. And so the importance of having an executive coach, the importance of going to therapy and having a therapist or a psychologist is important. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of, how do you get to your optimal peak to be the best version of yourself, to help you evolve and move to the next level. Sometimes we don't necessarily see our own barriers in our or our own roadblocks that we've in placed. And so sometimes a coach, and not sometimes, but oftentimes a coach, a therapist, a psychologist can help us identify those barriers that we've enacted to help us move through that. So that's the first thing. Second, the power of networking, networking. And so my initial thoughts when I came, as I'm transitioning about networking was that it was selfish, because I felt like I was asking someone for something and I didn't, necessarily uh, gravitate to that. But I had to change my mindset on, there are things that I have to offer someone in networking, and it's about relationship. It's not just about asking someone for something, but it's about relationship building. And in order to achieve success, it's about the relationships that you form and create, and networking is extremely critical and important in doing that. I don't think we give a lot of credit to that, the importance of constantly networking, whether that's through LinkedIn, whether that's going to events like this, finding ways to constantly, not just initial meeting, but cultivating those relationships. And so, whether it's writing down, hey, I met this person, and then following up a month later or 2 months later or 2 weeks later, I'm just circling back on a conversation we had, don't really want anything from you, I'm just letting you know I'm still here. And maybe, you never know, a month later, so that individual may think of you and be your advocate for an opportunity you didn't know that existed. So networking is critical, but not just the initial, but also the follow through and maintaining the relationships. It is difficult, but it requires work and it requires investment, and that investment will pay off in the long run. Branding is another thing that I've learned. You've got to identify what is your personal brand. A coach can absolutely help you um, identify what that brand is. How do you brand yourself, whether it's through amazing pictures? What do you stand for? What do you value? And being able to spit that off in an elevator or a 5-minute conversation when someone says, "Hey, I'm going to bring you up to the podium." But having but having that brand and developing your brand and knowing your brand will constantly evolve is important, and constantly, updating your networking, your business cards, your LinkedIn or your other social media platforms to continue to cultivate the brand that you currently have, and investing in the brand that in the way in the path that you want to achieve. Another thing I learned was there's absolutely no set leadership path on the civilian side or in corporate America. It's not necessarily a one direct path like it is in the military, but it's a stair step. It can go right, left, and you've got to entertain that journey and be okay with that and be flexible and less rigid about it. But it comes with also networking, talking, and reading. I literally am at this point reading 5 different books about different topics, about different professions, about different organizations, because that's allowed me to navigate those different steps and those different avenues on, and I get to create the path that I want to create for myself. And there's no one set way to be successful. There are multiple ways of being successful. No one would have ever thought when we were 20-year-old that Tracy, I didn't think it, maybe she knew it, that she would be, a retail executive or even start a startup, a tech startup. We would have never thought that, you know, 20 something years ago. But that's a part of that journey and those stairs and reading and being able to take those risks and networking. And then lastly, I'll share the value of being authentic. I really do feel like even though I was who I was, you was going to get me in the military. On the corporate side, it is absolutely valued. And people want you to be your authentic self. Everyone's not going to be able to take it and everyone's not going to be able to appreciate it. But when you feel comfortable in who you are every day, it permeates in the work that you bring. It permeates in the person that you show up as. It permeates in your leadership skills, and people are drawn to that. And not only that, but you feel less stress. You don't feel like the weight of the world on you at the end of the day. Yeah, there's some weight, but at least there's not that weight of, oh, now I got to take this mask off or take this makeup off or take this part of me off. At least, being your authentic self, showing up as who you are, who you were meant to be, and allowing the people that are attracted to that to know that it's okay to be their authentic self. So I'll pause there and I'll transition it back to my really good friend, Tracy.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you. Thank you, Betty. That was no, that was truly amazing. That was. Thank you for sharing that insight. So I'm going to talk. I'm going to transition us over into thriving in the corporate world. Before I go there, I just want to understand who's in the audience so that I'm tailoring the message so it's meeting your needs. Who currently works for a corporation? All right. Who themselves are have their own startup or company? So this is mostly entrepreneurs. Okay. Any military prior service? Look at that. Okay. 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 Great. So we got a little bit of everything. Okay. So all right, then I won't edit anything out of this. All right. So when I as we're moving into the corporate piece, I want to explore some strategies for navigating the corporate terrain and achieving success. So, has anyone heard of pie? No? All right. So, when I was at Walmart and there was this executive and a brother, he pulls me to lunch and he's just like, Tracy, you have, like so much runway. I really want to invest with you. I want to be a part of your success. And I was just like, what? Okay. And so was so thrilled that he was willing to invest in me. And he put me on. This was for me one of those game changers. So it's called PIE: performance, image, and exposure. and I probably should have brushed up on it, but there is a percentage. So if you want to thrive in, for instance, in the corporate realm, right? If you're amongst peers and you want to stand out and you want to get ready for that next promotion, you have to understand the elements of pie. And so, what do you all think? If I'm going to get promoted, what percentage do you believe it's based on my performance? Throw some numbers out. What percent? 70%? Okay. Okay. 40, 70. Okay. How much of it is my image? Okay. 60? Okay. And then what is how much of it is based off of my exposure? Okay. So I'm not gonna give you all the exact percentages because I've it's been years since I've actually looked at it. But this is the part that stuck with me. I was always the type that had my head down doing the work, right? I'm knocking out the work. And then I would look, this is in the military, this is even like in the beginning when I went to the corporate side. And it was always the guy that was chumming it up in the boss's office, not doing anything, like no work, just show up to meetings, ate up, chewed up, spit out, but was still getting like all the accolades, right? And what I learned is that while I'm in my office with my head down, he's working the building and he's taking credit for all the work that I'm doing. Real talk. And so when you're looking at pie, exposure is the most important piece. I know someone has probably looked it up already. Is anyone? I knew it. So 60% is based on exposure, ladies and gentlemen. Exposure. And so when you're thinking about it, I liken it to spreading your brand around. Earlier in the panel, I spoke about, taking on a project because it's going to help your additional skill set. But what it also does, ladies and gentlemen, it helps you gain additional exposure across the company. So if your boss is a boss that wants to keep you in place because they know that once you leave, they're not going to look as good, sometimes they like to keep you under their thumb. And they will even go as far as to hurt your brand to keep you underneath their thumbs. You cannot allow a single person in an organization to own your brand. And so you have to be diligent in finding time to spread your brand around that organization. And what does that mean? It could be a quick 15, if you're dealing with execs don't have time. So just say, hey, Bill, send an email, you know, love to grab a 15-minute coffee. That's not a lot of time, right? If you say, Tracy, I need 15 minutes of your time, I want to grab coffee, just want to learn, I'm new to the company, want to learn more about what your organization do. Absolutely. I can afford 15 minutes. And just in that 15 minutes, you can then set an impression on that person that when an opportunity comes up later, they may just ping you or pull you. So just small things like setting up coffee, all the way to being intentional and going to someone and saying, hey, I know that you're working on this. I actually have past experience. And if I can be of any assistance, glad to, lend work or even thought leadership. Different things like that. That exposure is so important. That also lends itself into networking, right? I do believe oftentimes why men tend to promote quicker than women is typically after work, we're running home to get the kids, get dinner, get all the things settled. Whereas men have time typically, not always, but typically have time to say, hey, babe, I'm gonna be out. I need to go to this networking event, or I need to meet with this person. Or I need to go golf. I'm learning how to golf, y'all. I'm like, I got to be in all the places, right? And so that exposure piece is so important. The next part, it's not performance. It's image, right? And so 30% is image, y'all. That's what 90% already. That's 90%, right? Me too. You aren't. Babe, you weren't the only one. It was me too. And so I thought it was all performance, performance, performance. But that's how we behave. So when you think of image, people need to know that uh do you fit well in this environment? Do you if I put you in front of a high stake client, are you going to represent us well? Can I trust the business with you, right? It's not always like, oh, do you look a certain way? It's that executive presence, how you carry yourself, right? And are you going to represent well? And so you got to figure that out. You got to understand, do you fit that mold? And if you don't, it's okay. Don't stay there. If you can't be authentic, it won't show, right? And then the last part is performance. So I say all that to say is if you're anything like Tracy, you had it completely backwards and you are not going to get where you were trying to go by working harder. Most people will just say, "Oh, let me put another hour into this. Let me do this," when honestly they just need to lift their heads up and get to know people who are around them, develop their brand within corporate America. So that is one thing that I am completely asking you all to consider and put into your toolbox because it will help you, right? And share that because we get it wrong, especially when you look at people of color. We tend to over credential, right? We over credential, we overdo everything. And all of those things at the end of the day is not where it's not going to get us where we want to go. And so we have to share this knowledge. And so that when we get into these spaces, we understand, how do we plan our, I'm going to say our attack. When you think of your strategy, that definitely needs to be part of it. Pie. All right, moving along. This is something that Betty spoke about earlier is mentoring, right? And let's take a step past that sponsorship. Who knows the difference between mentoring and sponsorship? You want to stand right here and do this whole speech? That was such a perfect response. And so I know we have to speak into the microphone, so I will repeat. What's your name? So Mark gave the perfect response. And so a mentor is, someone who can just help guide you, give you pointers, such. Now, your mentor can't necessarily get into certain rooms, not always. And so therefore you need a sponsor. And to Mark's point, your sponsor is going to carry your portfolio. So who in your organization is carrying your portfolio? If no one is carrying your portfolio, the chances of you getting those great assignments or promoting have decreased significantly. Why? Because when they get at that table and they're discussing talent and they're placing people into the next levels, you have people in there and they've got a horse in the race. And they're going to do everything they can do to make sure their person gets positioned because it also helps solidify them as well, getting your people in place. So it very much is a game of chess. And so you have to ensure that you have people who, and if you're getting coffee with people, and I'm not saying only give time to people who can take you to places, but I'm saying make sure that you are also offering when you look at your pie of time, that part of that you're giving to people who actually have seats at the table, right? Who can actually advocate for you. Because looking to the left and right and complaining to people to your left and the right, and if they can't change your circumstances, you are wasting your time. And what do we say? Time is the one thing that you cannot get back. So spend it wisely. All right. And so and then the last part, when in corporate America, one of the things that truly helped me goes back to what we're talking about in the panel, building high performing teams. And when it came for me, building teams, like I am quick to assess my teams. And that's something I don't know if it's a sixth sense or something we developed in the military, but I can read people pretty quickly. And I'm not that far off most of the time. Some people may surprise me a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I can pretty much understand the personalities on the team. And so I know what my non-negotiables are, and I am quick to either either terminate you, or if I think that you're good for the organization, I will help find you somewhere else in the organization that I think you can truly thrive. Because here's the thing, why do you want to be somewhere where you're miserable? And you know nobody likes you, right? So I was like, we're gonna have an honest conversation. I'm gonna make sure we got this conversation at 4:50 before you go home. But we're gonna have a real honest conversation. But you're also gonna know that, because you are a good person and you do have, you do bring value to the organization in other places. Let's position you where you can be successful. So very rarely have I had to like actually fire a person. It would, through honest conversations, either we would help place them somewhere else, or I would help them, be a reference outside and say like, look, I'm giving you 60 days, right? And here's the PIP, and this is what it is. If you don't change these things, you're going to get terminated. And so, because these things are honestly, the issues are more subjective and their personality, this is who you are and it doesn't fit. And I want you to be successful. So let's spend these 60 days. I'll let you leave, 3 hours early every day. You need to be interviewing, you need to be hitting the streets, give people the opportunity to make a safe lane. So for me, and that gets around when people know that you've exited a person, but you've exited a person with dignity. That says a lot. That says a lot. And then when it comes to the teams, I ask so much of my teams, and I know that. The old Tracy, early on in her stage, she would, if she had to take the whole team on her back and drag them across the finish line, we're gonna make this deadline. And then I learned like that's not how you build teams. It was more the how. It was more of the what for me than the how. And then as I matured in my leadership style, I understood how important the how was. And so for me, it was how do we get there together? And I know that if I'm going to, I coin myself as a warm demander. So if I'm going to demand a lot from my teams, then I know I need to invest double into my teams. Otherwise, I'm going to bankrupt, right? Because if you keep debiting, pretty soon you're going to bankrupt, and you don't want to bankrupt your talent. So you want to constantly find ways to pour in, if it's development, right? Intentional development, finding times where you're just like, you know what, y'all, it's the summertime, it's on a Friday at lunchtime, you guys go enjoy your family. Like, find different ways to just delight the teams, pour in them, because there's going to be times where you're going to need them to stay late. And if there's really nothing going around, why are you keeping them around just to keep them around? And so finding those opportunities to just different ways to delight the teams, and also being intentional in their development. And so for me in corporate America, I would say those are, few of the tools that have really helped me with my success. And lastly, I forgot, I almost want to mention, I always find someone in my organization that I want to replace me, because I know I want to move up. And I don't want my boss to be afraid of me moving up and they try to keep me in place. So I ensure that I find 1 to 2 people who I can train to do my job, and then give them the space. When I'm in a meeting, I'm not saying, okay, well, I was able to put this together. Oh, Sabrina put together this wonderful brief, blah, blah, blah. Matter of fact, next meeting, I'd love to bring Sabrina in so that she can kind of talk through her work, right? So instead of me speaking for the team, allow members of my team to come in, get that exposure, right? And so that they can move on. And here's the thing: if people love to get talented people love to get in environments where they know they're going to promote. So guess what? I don't have to recruit. People are dying to get on my teams, right? And you take care of your teams, they take care of you. And so those, and as simple as those things sound, I'm telling y'all, they have been tried, true, and it's taken care of me well, where I've never looked for a job. So from Walmart, it seemed like every 18 months, they had me all over the place. I was running a stores for them. So I turned around an underperforming store, went to being director of innovations. From there, the CEO was like, Tracy, I don't know my bench. Help me build my bench. So then I went over from innovations to HR. And then we did all the things. I was like, this space is great. This is super subjective. Put me back where the money is. And so I went and then ran a $500 million store operations for them. And every time someone was tapping me. And the same thing across other companies. So let's go ahead and pause for a second. And where are we on time? Oh my God, it's 2:54. So We may not get to the other section about the entrepreneurs, and I'll speak quickly on that, but I really want to leave y'all with with the information around networking. When you get into those rooms, right? We talked about exposure. Exposure is important, right? What are the tools that I can leverage to gain me more exposure? Even if you're an entrepreneur, right? Who knows who you are? Who knows what you're doing, right? Uh, are you, only talking to people who are consuming your product? Are you not thinking about speaking to people who are investors, right? Do your brand speak to investors? Do your brand speak to other organizations that can actually help take your organization to the next level? Think about that ecosystem and what your brand looks like within that ecosystem. And so part of that is just getting into rooms so that you can start plugging in and building that ecosystem. And so from networking, so we're gonna pause and we're gonna talk about the art of mirroring and labeling. Okay. And this actually helps even in interviews, believe it or not. It even helps in interviews. And so, have y'all ever been to an event where someone gets you in a corner and they will not stop talking about themselves? It's like blood dripping from your ears, right? Don't be that person. Don't be that person. Actually, because human nature, we are self-absorbed to a degree, right? Some of us just can fake it better than others. Uh, and so you enjoy people more when they allow you to talk about yourself, right? And so the trick is when you're mirroring is to get people to talk more about themselves than you. And when you do that, and when you do that, you leave a better lasting impression. Because there's always time, right? If a person is interested in you, there is time for you to tell them who you are. You don't need to try to use those 30 minutes to tell them your whole life story. Like, nobody cares that much. Nobody cares that much. And so, say a few things to get their attention and then start the conversation. Now, this is where the mirroring starts. At the end, whatever someone says, you repeat that back to them. And you repeat it back to them almost with a question, right? Um, and you'll do, and if I would give you like the formula, it's like you mirror. You may mirror a third time, you may not, and then you label, right? And so when you label, that's it's like active listening. You're showing the person that you're listening. So if we're talking, what's your name in the back? Andrea. So Andrea, if we're talking and you're like, and okay, let's try it. Matter of fact, come on up, Andrea. Let's do it. Come on up. Come on up. You see, I just call people out. I keep y'all on your feet. Betty was first, now it's Andrea. Thank you, sweetheart. So let's just have a regular conversation, okay? How was your day today?
It was actually pretty good. I got here and here amongst amazing people and learning so much from people like yourself.
You're learning so much from me.
Yes, I am absolutely. The thing about mirroring and labeling so far has been like on point for me.
It's been on point for you.
Yes, yes. So I'm definitely so it's definitely something I can use moving forward.
Oh, so it sounds like you're getting quite a bit out of your session here at B Camp.
Yeah, so far so good. No complaints yet.
So what I just did, and she knew I was mirroring her, and she still, it's also, and so she's still engaged, right? So it's just an authentic way of communicating, and it'll feel a little like you're being fake in the beginning until you get used to it. And so all I did was take like the last few words that she said, and I repeated it to her, and I changed the tone of my voice where it's like a question, which opened it up for her to continuously talk, right? But then, so that after a while, it's like talking to a door if you don't engage. And that's when the labeling part comes. So now she knows I'm active listening. So it sounds like, or what I'm hearing is that you're learning a lot today, right? So that's the label. Do y'all have it? Y'all got it? Okay, so let's take literally 2 minutes. Let's turn to a person that's near you and let's practice labeling, okay? Come on, let's do it. And then tonight, when you want to partner with him? Oh, you came in? Okay, I'll help you out. but then there's a networking event tonight, and that's a great time for us to be able to practice. Okay, so we're gonna take a few minutes.
Such a long time ago, but it was a really great time. I had fun. Wow. Ooh, she would say, don't be so serious. Every day, just yeah. I definitely, I credit
Oh, or yes, you mirror well, hunty. All right, so everyone, if I could just have y'all come on back forward. 10 seconds more. Okay. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Petty Betty, 2. Oh. Oh, that was wonderful. Okay. I appreciate that. Darius, listen, we're making space for everyone. Thank you for holding me accountable. Okay. So, what did you all feel about that exercise? How did that feel? Did it feel a little weird? Be honest. This is something new. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Come on, Jessica. So for me, it was weird because I knew what was happening. However, as I was explaining, there are often times where I'm speaking to someone, and because I'm very introspective, I try not to overshare, and so allow them to talk. But then I'm looking for exit because now I'm overwhelmed, and so now this method is going to allow me to let them get to their punchline and me to now exit.
Hey, that's good. Anyone else or anything else anyone would like to share? Please, Mark.
Thank you so much for this. I have a journalism background, so asking questions and actually listening to people. Believe it or not, although I speak for a living, I really enjoy listening to people when I get to meet them. And I typically start like, "Who did you want to become?" So a lot of questions I was asking Betty was like, "What would younger Betty tell today's Betty about where your career is going?" And asking things like that really allows people to pause on who they've been, who they're becoming, and who they want to be. And so it was really helpful to hear her story because I believe that our stories, her story, my story, our story, is really what's going to change the world and the way we work.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, so we've got the whole idea of mirroring and labeling. Y'all, but you got to get the label part down. Otherwise, people know after a while you playing them, right? So you got to get that. Sounds like it feels like, right? You know, what I'm hearing you say is right. That active listening piece. We've got to make sure that's in there. The other part is finding the last tool when it comes to effective networking is finding a common place and building from there. It could be as small as men do this very well who love sports. They started sports. That's why I was like, oh, I gotta go to sports, right? And so I had to pay more attention, right? And I learned how to get more in depth into that. When I was in the military, it was about guns. So I started learning more about guns, right? Um, and for me, what always helped me is that my father would always restore all old antique cars. And so if I would get around a certain age demographics and such, I knew to use that, right? I'd throw that out. Or I could throw out guns. I could throw out hunting. Believe it or not, I grew up hunting with my father. And so things that people, may not expect, you kind of throw that out, but you're searching for a place as a person is talking and you're learning more about them, mirroring. Take note of what they're saying so that you can come back later and use that as a point of commonality. And then from there, that's when they start seeing you as an individual, right? And you start standing out with them. So it's really important as well that you find the lowest common denominator, and then you build your conversation from there. All right. Okay. So was that helpful? Yes, 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 yes. Okay, we literally had like 3 minutes. Candace is not gonna get me, y'all. Okay, so 7. Oh, she being a sugar mama. Thank you. Okay, so that was so inappropriate. Sorry. So let's talk through about. I want to discuss. You know what? Let's go here. So 5 key nuggets of advice for entrepreneurs to increase the likeliness. You know what? Before we go to that, that jump from corporate America into the entrepreneur world is real. It is real. My husband, for like the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years, was been like, Tracy, you need to do it. You need to do it. I'm just like, but I like that every 2 weeks, that check, the benefits, you can call that dental a scam if you want to. It's a benefit. And so, and especially, you think about stock option, all those things, and you think about, your 401k when you retire. And those things can put fear around you where you just stay put. And so, I took a moment as I was transitioning out of corporate America to just be still. And for me, I learned, I call myself a spiritual person. And being in the military and being successful in corporate America, what I learned about myself is that I came really good at controlling outcomes, right? And if I take the prettiness off of it, the truth is I had learned how to manipulate well, right? That's really what it was. And I got paid well to manipulate situations to favor my employer, right? I got really great at that. And with that happened, that started leaking into where Tracy started playing God in Tracy's life. And I didn't even realize it, right? It was like I took it to a whole nother level of I control this and I control my destiny and I chart my path and blah, 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 like all these things. And I realized that I had lost faith. I had lost faith. And so for me, I went on a journey of restoring faith. And I am still on that journey of restoring faith. And God just started showing me things. And I was just like, okay, so wait a minute. I took this global job to then be able to parlay that back into a C-suite job. Like I'm right there. Y'all been working my whole life to get here. And you're telling me you want me to go out and become an entrepreneur and then in the tech space? Like, God, you know it don't work like that. I've not touched tech since the military. And you have to stay on top of it. There's, credentialing, like all the things. And I was just like, how? And I said, you know what? Stop questioning, stop trying to control outcomes, and just trust. And that's when I learned meditation, right? I started meditating. Oh my goodness. Understanding frequencies and just healing and, healing bowls and just frequencies, breaking up the stuff, right? Where I could just start seeing clearly. And so for me, jumping into that entrepreneur space, it was very against what I would advise people. So I told you that whole story to say, this is Tracy's path. This is Tracy's path, right? And it may not work for you all. Now, if Tracy was controlling outcomes, this is the path that Tracy would take. So my path is a faith journey. I literally left the company, put in my 2-week notice, left, and then jumped into this tech startup. Because God, even before the 2 weeks, God had already started pulling resources. And I was just like, what? Like all these great things were happening. And I was just like, okay, let me like stop overthinking it because I will scare myself and go backwards. And so I jumped into it. I'm not advising that to be everyone's like path, right? And so I share that with you because I'm being authentic. But the controlling, Tracy, controlling outcomes and, in wanting to favor the odds, this is what I would first do. Okay. Make sure that you have built up your savings, right? Because if you're going to jump into that entrepreneur standpoint, you got to have a financial cushion to alleviate the stress of risk taking because you're going to take risks, right? You shouldn't go to the grocery store hungry and shop at a grocery store, right? Because you're gonna buy all the stuff that you shouldn't do. So you don't start a company and your bank account is hungry, right? Like don't get into it because you're gonna make poor decisions. Or you're the first time you'll get scared and have to start, you may get back into a place that you don't want to be. So build up your savings. I would say anywhere from like 6 months, if you can, up to a year. That will give you the cushion to really get out there and weather the storms and allow you to focus and be real strategic around building your company. Secondly, start building your network. So connect with other entrepreneurs, join local business organizations, things like Beat Camp, Atlanta Black Chambers, all of those things. Get into those organizations and start networking, leveraging your mirroring and labeling tactics. All right. Next, do your research, right? Study you want to make sure that you understand your market, your competition, pricing models, if there's any legal or regulatory issues, because you can build a great plan. And if you're not clear on legal and, regulatory, that profit can get snatched right from you. So make sure that you're also clear on those pieces as well. And just make sure that, to do the research and have a solid plan mapped out. Next, begin transitioning well before you quit your job. Tracy didn't do that, but I advise you. If you're not on a faith walk, make sure you think, begin transitioning well before you quit your day job, right? If you can get to a place where you feel like you're like, okay, I don't have really 6 months, but I'm looking at the cash flow and I can keep things balanced. Don't be afraid to make that leap. It's never going to be perfect, but just set yourself up for the best success. And then lastly, mentally prepare for ups and downs. We all talked about this entrepreneurship. Y'all know it is not for the faint of heart, right? You have to have intestinal fortitude. So I would submit, have something that grounds you, right? My faith grounds me, my family grounds me. Make sure that you have that in place. And so that when those ups and downs happen, you've got something in place to help you weather that. I know my time is up. You all, I am on LinkedIn. Please connect if there's anything that I can do to be further assistance. It's Tracy Coleman Lloyd. I know in the B Camp, we can all connect through that way as well. Thank you all for your time. I hope you all got your toolbox filled today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy. So much dope.